The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, I'm Carl Seidel, host of The People's View. The show is sponsored by the Nashua City Republican Committee, and if you like to attend our meetings, they're the second Thursday of every month at 6:30 at the Crown Plaza. And if you want to find out more about our organization, you can go to nashuagop.org to see our website and learn about the events that we have.
Welcome to The People's View.
Hello, and I'd like to remind you today that People's View is supported by the Nashua GOP. So if you want to get involved with some of the politics here, local events or local or statewide, contact the NashuaGOP.org and tell them that you want to get involved. And today we have the honor of having the Governor Sununu and Senator Avard. They're going to talk about how we're developing New Hampshire's business end of it. And you visited a lot of companies that are here, and you're trying to get others to come into New Hampshire.
You know, absolutely. I just think there's so much potential. You know, New Hampshire is always going to be very, very good. We have great fundamentals: no sales tax, no income tax, the New Hampshire advantage. But you can't just kind of rest on those laurels. You got to go out and promote, and you got to go out and remind people why we're so different here, what we do that's different, and again, encourage them to come in. And that's whether you're trying to attract a business, trying to attract actual employment, workforce, young families, retirees. It doesn't matter who it is. We have something to offer everyone above and beyond what other states have. So we just have this kind of untapped potential that I think we got to keep pushing on.
Definitely.
And what we've been able to do in the state with the Senate, Senator Avard led a lot of great charges, working with Senator Moore, Speaker Jasper, even across aisles to make sure that we're capitalizing on our opportunities, whether it's breaking down regulation, lowering taxes, and reminding people that they have access to government. They have access and transparency to their local elected officials. It's not unlike any other place in the country. And that's a huge advantage to whether it's a business or an individual. It's a huge advantage for them to really feel like there's a partnership there, right? It's not the state as some sort of sitting landlord for businesses and industry. We're really a partner going through these things together, and they know they're going to be able to come to us and work with us to open up doors for them.
What was it like going around visiting, 100 companies that you
We did.
had?
In my first 100 days as governor, I visited just over 120 companies.
Wow.
Everything from, we were up in Canada for a couple of days, visiting a lot of companies up there, all looking to come down. I mean, people think manufacturing is dead up in the North Country. Well, what better place to move a manufacturing company out of Canada than to northern New Hampshire? Right. It's a perfect match. It's only a short drive there. But you got to go up and talk about it and promote it. Remind them of all the great things that we have here, and if they're going to come anywhere in the United States, well, right in northern New Hampshire makes perfect sense for them. Or we spent time in New York, in Massachusetts, Vermont, Maine, all over the place, visiting companies, talking to their workforce, talking to their employees, getting the feedback, right? Want to hear from them why they are choosing us or not potentially choosing us. Some were leads that we had, some were complete cold calls. But it was a great exercise, if you will, to really understand and get a feel for what's out there and what other dynamics are going on in other states, because it is a true competition.
It was interesting. I tried to get into the office, but Amazon was in there, or somebody from Amazon. He's been working hard to get Amazon in, that would be great.
Are they going to come up here at all?
Please
Are you
come.
going to visit us?
Getting Amazon is a long shot.
Oh,
There's
yeah,
no doubt about
definitely,
that.
yeah.
When you look at their criteria and how they've set it up. But when you scratch the surface just a little bit, understand we're southern New Hampshire is part of the greater Boston region.
Right.
Great access to a high-tech workforce, probably one of the best locations you could be for a high-tech workforce. We have all the advantages of greater Boston with none of the headaches.
Right.
Right? We don't have the traffic and the taxes and the bureaucracy and the things that really impede people's ability to really enjoy the quality of life that we benefit from up here. So when you put all those pieces together, take advantage of what Boston has, but also double down on the advantages we have that they don't. You know, for example, they want to be next to a major international airport. Well, in southern New Hampshire, you can be 45 minutes away. We don't need to promise any infrastructure projects. I-93, all 4 lanes are being built. Exit 4A is going to be built. It is bought and paid for, right? So they're just coming in on a shovel-ready site that with infrastructure that already meets their needs. Boston Logan, they've decided they're not expanding cargo capacity anymore.
No.
They're not. Well, guess what? We just revamped Manchester Airport for the reason of expanding cargo capacity. And for a company that just, I heard bought something like 30 new 767s or something like that, that's going to start vertically integrating cargo, well, what better place to be than in a place like Londonderry or just south of Manchester, 10 minutes away from the airport? So when you scratch the surface a little and you talk about the enterprise value that they have here, we don't give big tax breaks and tax gimmicks here because A, they're gimmicks trying to catch up to the fundamentals we already have. No. Right? We've had the best tax break in the country since 1789. No sales tax and income tax. Everyone else is trying to catch up to us.
We're lowering taxes, right?
We're lowering, that's right.
And,
yeah, let's not forget, the Senate made a huge charge and lowered, thanks to Senator Avard, frankly, lowered business taxes here, right? Got rid of rules and regulations that were onerous. So when you look at the whole package, it makes perfect sense to land a company like Amazon right in southern New Hampshire. We have all those benefits, none of the headaches, great transparency to government, and a true partnership that's going to be long-lasting.
Well, I think you're all right. It's just now you got to get them to listen a little bit, I guess.
That's right.
And, in Nashua, we just visited some of the senators, Senator Lasky and Carson. We visited the Gibson Bagpipes here in Nashua. They're a manufacturer. And it's nice to see that whether you're a big company or you're a small company, people are growing and they want to stay here. And I think one of the initiatives that you had was you wanted to reduce some of the regulations. I think some of the smaller businesses might be struggling with that, and we're still working on that.
Small businesses are more sensitive to some of the rules and regulations that I'm sure you know about.
Yeah, it's the bureaucracy that they have to go through.
Yeah.
Where the larger businesses, they have infrastructure to handle this. And of course, we're working on that. But I think some of the smaller businesses that want to thrive still haven't gotten past some of the threshold, and that was one of the first things that you did, which I think is it helps when people know that look, there's this bureaucracy, this red tape that you have to go through. We see it.
Where is our one-stop shop? Canada has it. You're talking about Canada. They're used to going to one-stop to set up their businesses.
That's right.
We have to do it. In 2010 or 11, we started that. 2012, when they moved in the Democrats and everything, they stopped. They didn't do anything.
Representative Greg Hill has an idea that we'll bring up, but it's the communication between the government and itself, and being able to get access to information readily available, especially for the millennials.
That's right.
It's very important for them to be included in the conversation because, that's one of the advantages that we need to start working on as well.
You're a millennial, aren't you?
Thank you.
But it's a great point.
I'm a granddad.
we set up a millennial commission just for that point. Senator Avard is right on it.
Yeah.
You got to have their input as part of the
That's
process.
right, yeah.
And that something I proposed in my budget, and thank goodness the Senate and the House agreed to, was the idea of setting up. We don't believe in big government on this side of the aisle. You know that. But we did set up the new Department of Business and Economic Affairs, which in theory can be that one-stop shop. I mean, it just got started. We have a great team over there driving a lot of the stuff we're doing with Amazon and a lot of our proposals. But when you take the Community Development Finance Authority, the Business Finance Authority, the Small Business Association, we have all these different organizations which do great work on their own, but they're not coordinated.
Right.
So now we finally have a place to not oversee them per se, but really make sure they're coordinated and the left hand knows what the right hand is doing. And when you do that and you open up those communication pathways, great things can come.
Did you know about what happened with the Justice Department when they coordinated the communication system up there in Concord? That was 4 years ago.
No.
We gave them $1 million extra for their budget if they would do that, because we had a number of representatives who worked that way in their business. They communicated, combined 9 different separate
when they did the
ones.
centralization.
Centralization.
Right, yeah,
and now it works better with less people, and they're solving problems quicker.
And saving money doing it.
That's right.
And at the end of the day, it's about the customer, right? It's that customer service. If you have something and you need to call whatever department
That's
it is,
right.
you got to be able to get real answers quickly and easily, because frankly, we all have other things to be doing with our lives instead of worrying about the maze of bureaucracy that you got to go through just to get a simple answer. So I think you're spot on. By breaking down those communication barriers, you just open up a whole world of opportunity for individuals.
One of the areas that I think that we're also working on is workforce development. We really have got to focus on that. That Gibson Bagpipes, they're actually communicating or want to communicate with the New Hampshire Community College because they need people to train. BAE has a great program at the New Hampshire National Community College, so that microscience technology, making things for the F-35, which is fantastic. And kids can get right out of high school and get into a manufacturing at a very low price. I mean, it's like $5,000 or something like that to take the course. Instead of, if you don't want to be a career college person, you can go into this manufacturing. Mavritech here in Nashua. There's another organization that teaches low electricity. These businesses are taking it upon themselves to train kids right out of high school. And more and more businesses are taking advantage of that. And that's one of the things that we've got to encourage across the state is the workforce development, getting people excited about, hey, manufacturing is not a dirty job. You can make $35,000, $75,000, $100,000 as a manufacturer. Yeah, without a college degree. Go figure. And one of the nice things about that, like with BAE, you start working for them, then you're into the program, then they can assist you when you want to go for your bachelor's or your master's degree, or and so these are projects that are here, that are existent, and we want to encourage.
Are you having, with all your different administrative departments, are you having communication problems or with them, or are they separate so much? Are they talking amongst each other?
No. I mean, a big part of management, whether it's your business, your family, or the public sector, it's communication.
Right.
So I think traditionally one of the frustrations was we had great workers doing great things, but in a silo. And these guys were here, and education was here, and health and human services was here. But again, you got to get them all coordinated. Let's for a good example and a kind of a microcosm, but very important example of this is the opioid crisis. You have treatment, recovery, prevention, enforcement, right? You can't battle this thing while just going after here. The recovery folks have to understand what treatment is doing. And treatment needs to understand, and vice versa with enforcement and prevention, because they all intertwine.
That's right.
And what I've really tried to do is force everybody into the conversation, force everyone to the table, get not just Republican versus Democrat type politics, but kind of the inner politics, fighting for the dollars and all that kind of stuff, which you're always going to see when you have government contracts, and we rely on a lot of government contracts to help fight the opioid crisis. But you got to force everyone in the room together and really take the time to understand what each one is doing. And when everyone has a better global perspective, they still have their expertise, but a better perspective of, someone in the treatment world knows what the plan is on enforcement, and someone in enforcement knows what's happening in schools with prevention. They can be part of those solutions too. And when you do that, everything opens up. So when you extrapolate it out to the different agencies we have in government, I try to do the same thing. We have cabinet meetings. And for the first, I think from what I hear, it's the first cabinet meetings that have happened in many, many years here. But it's just, again, making sure everyone understands what the mission is. What's the philosophy? Where are we trying to go, and what are we trying to achieve? You've got to give people a mission. And when you do that, when you lead great people, they
can develop.
They can really develop, and then you give them the opportunity, ability, and responsibility of spreading their wings a little, pushing the envelope, trying things that haven't been tried before. You give them that permission, and they're going to run with it. And I think that's why we've been so successful in the first year.
I think also in previous administrations, the silo thing became, everybody's
that
protecting
was referring
their,
to whether
their
people
turf.
were protecting their domain or whether
Right, and
they were.
that's been like that for a long time through the past few administrations, and so trying to get out of that rut is not going to happen overnight. And I think that there's a level of trust that is being built, and I think that's happening. It's just taking time, and it's only been not even a year yet, right?
No, not even a year. So but it's not just the governor's office. That's with the legislature.
Oh, sure.
That's with Republicans and Democrats. That's with nonprofits, right? Everyone I think is really coming around to this idea of what they can do, right? What the possibilities really are. Now, you're always going to have, frankly, some, if I may, career bureaucrats that have been there forever, that don't like change. They don't want change. It's don't touch my cheese mentality. Leave me alone. I know my job. And look, that's all fine and good to a point. They have great institutional knowledge, but they got to be on the team. They got to be coming along for the ride. We're not trying to do anything that isn't clearly in the best interest of the state. And the reason I can say that with confidence is because we don't do it on partisan politics. We work across the aisle. We work with folks in the private sector. We're bringing everybody in as part of that conversation, and that's how you know you're going to get the best results. And so we're trying to give everyone the confidence that by having a mission, by having a philosophy, and by kind of letting folks go and giving them that ability to push themselves ourselves a little bit, great things can come.
We went to Gatehouse recently, grand opening here in Nashua. They've gone from like 10 beds to like 40 beds to treat the opiate crisis. And it was somebody from your staff that came to present, and I didn't realize he was a Democrat.
Oh.
And I thought,
Marty, yeah.
Marty,
Yeah, he's great.
Marty, you're a Democrat. I sang with him in the hall, right? So, oh yeah, you must be. I don't know.
Well,
but I thought that was rather revealing, and I thought, well, you have somebody in your administration that
Well,
was
he's not just a Democrat. He's a hardcore left-wing Democrat. But when it comes to knowing recovery, understanding what that world is from a first-hand perspective, he's one of the best. And then we have Chief Mara, who's really our drug czar, kind of understanding the enforcement side, the prevention side, and things we can do there. I mean, they make a great team. But politics doesn't matter. It's just getting the best result.
Yeah, and I think that's what I gathered from that. It was
we all came from business backgrounds. I think that helps us looking at a perspective because, we deal with the people, but we don't know whether they're whatever.
Right.
When somebody comes to my office, I don't ask. I had a representative the other day in my office, and I didn't ask. And it doesn't come to, for
Do
some
you do that
reason.
too? Like sometimes I have people in my office and we have a great conversation and they leave and I go, is he a Republican or Democrat? I don't even know. Which is fine.
They know I am.
Yeah, they know who we are. But yeah, no, I felt weird because that's happened to me a couple times.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I don't ask that stuff, but
it.
we have great conversations, but I'm kind of left wondering.
We do fight, obviously. We're at heads, but
We argue.
We argue.
We don't fight, we argue.
Well, yeah, but there's value. When the kids come to the Capitol and I sing to them, the first thing they ask sometimes is, what are you? Are you a Republican or a Democrat? And I have to stop them in their tracks. I'm a person. And if you lose sight of that, you lose sight of a lot of things. We're going to agree, disagree, but at the end of the day, you have information that I can draw off of, and I hope you have the same respect for me. And I think that's one of the things that I gather what's happening up there right now. And I think I shock some of the Democrats that are sitting on my committee because we have this on. We have a couple committees, and you get this sour face, at first, and it's like, how are you going to treat me? And I treat you like you're a human being.
Yeah.
And it just makes everything easy. We can laugh. You're a Yankees fan, I'm a Boston fan, whatever. And we start having a conversation, and I think that's important. I'm a proud conservative. I've always been a conservative, but it doesn't mean I can't talk with you. And I think that's one of the things that I'm beginning to see more and more in the Senate and in your office. I find that it's refreshing that we're not always like, okay, you're the enemy. Well, that's not happening on that level. Does that make sense?
You are spot on. And I think what it does is not just, I think, what the Senate and the House and what our office is doing in trying our best. Like you said, we have our conservative Republican principles and we stick to that, of course. But when it's almost disarming to folks when they realize that it's not just party first and it's not just a platform first. It's what's the issues? Who are you? What are we driving for? And when you do that, it sets a tone for everybody across state government. It really does. Because then that becomes kind of the standard that everyone has to live up to. And I think they love it. I mean, I think they do. I mean, there's some folks that are just built in a certain way where it's party and politics first. But when it comes to the responsibility that the Senate has, that the governor, that the House members have, you got to put the people first and you got to put the solutions first. And when you do that, anything can happen.
Let me just change the subject a little bit. You have an audit division. The legislature has an audit division.
The legislature does.
Has your administration looked into those reviews that they do?
We get a copy of every audit that's done.
Yeah.
I believe the Senate and the House decide which audits are going to come up every year. They have their own process for doing that. We really don't have input in terms of who's going to be audited, but we get the reports and we review them. We review them with the agency heads, or it's not just agencies. It's the community college. It's UNH. It's many of the various boards that we have also go through audit processes of their own. All the different sub-functions.
I was wondering if you found that useful to you following them, or are they, because
they're discouraging at times.
It's discouraging a lot of times because I saw, the paper had the one with the community colleges, and I thought they were operating very well, but I can see where they neglected one serious area of having the procedures in place to know everybody knows how you're operating and where the money goes, and about being able to evaluate. And I'm on Public Works, and they do a lot of things, and I thought they were running very well, but they have just been audited, and I see they have a little bit of the same thing. And I guess I was wondering whether that is a big problem in general with different divisions.
I would say that it's a great advantage to have that process.
Yes.
It doesn't, you got to manage it right, though. Just because someone has a couple issues, and everybody has issues, right? The audits are designed to go really dig deep and find things, so you want to do that. And most of the time you'll see in those audits, they have usually reviewed them with the department, and they'll say the department concurs or doesn't concur with the conclusions, and this solution is in place or whatever it is. So it's a very positive process. One thing I try to do is really get hands-on with it. And I think we've set a tone of, because I tend to be more of a hands-on type governor, I'll bring those department heads right into the office and say, okay, where are we falling down here? What else do you need from us? What else can we be doing, right, to make this easier, to make sure that you don't have these same problems? And when the word is out, and I think it is, that you get very involved in the details, or Senator Avard or Chuck Morris or Sean Jasper, whoever it is getting involved in the details, people say, oh yeah, we're going to be, I don't want to say scrutinized in a negative way, but we're going to be audited, and we're going to be held to a standard, and we have to meet that standard. And when you do that, again, people will rise to it.
Okay, so they see that not as a negative, but a positive. Well,
I see it as a positive. I'm sure anyone in their department doesn't like no one likes to be criticized, right? But I think most department heads say, well, sometimes they'll say, look, these assessments weren't fair. We don't think that was a correct characterization. Right. These assessments are probably areas where we could do better. Yeah. So I think, there's always going to be scrutiny on each of the comments there, but I think everyone sees it as usually, it's rare that they don't come in and say, look, it's just a way that we can make ourselves better.
That's exactly. I was just wondering whether, because when I was on the Committee for Rules and Regulations back in 2011, I don't think we had that type of response from the committees that the different parts of the administration that we, and I was just hoping that you're seeing the value of those things, because you do have a lot of talent there that can really be good. I
mean, the community college one, I think, was one that's gotten a lot of news lately, because it is fundamentally run pretty darn well.
Oh yeah.
But they had some flaws. They had some protocols and procedures that they just have to tighten up. Any organization tends to maybe get ahead of themselves a little bit in terms of process. That audit also went back like 5 years, something like that. So it was a pretty lengthy time frame, and they've made a lot of changes.
Well, I know there was changes in there because they did a much better job in presenting their capital budget to our committee than they did when I first started. Yeah, and we work with them, obviously, on the budget process. We work with them very closely through that whole process. So, no, I think they saw it as positive. Now, there are some changes that usually have to be made, whether it's process or even individuals. Sometimes you just need better management in there. And we're always looking for a fresh set of eyes. So sometimes I will ask a commissioner or someone else to step aside so we can bring somebody else in as part of the governor and council process. It doesn't necessarily mean they did a bad job or we're not happy with them, but sometimes just a good fresh set of eyes on any process is a healthy thing, that's all. And a lot of people, well, why would you ask me to leave? Well, because you've been there for 10 or 15 years, right? Things have changed. It's human nature to kind of get blinders on things. You got to really have somebody.
People don't like change.
They don't like change. They don't. Yeah. And that's one thing I'm learning very drastically. But a fresh set of eyes on any process is a healthy thing.
And there's new things that developed in, outside of your area that maybe somebody else knows about.
I'm learning as a second term that the more I'm getting into the weeds, the more I got to get deeper into the weeds. There's a lot of things that need to be fixed. DCYF, those areas of that you just keep looking in, and there's more situations that didn't happen overnight. And when you're in there for 1 term or 2 terms, and then you finally understand the problem. Then you have to get people to understand the narrative of what's going on, and then you got to get them on your side, and that takes time.
It also takes a Republican governor, I think.
that helps.
It's very refreshing. It's very refreshing. But I think one of the things that you start learning the process. For instance, energy. I had to have 2 study committees, one on transmission, distribution, generation, another one on the RPS. It's taken me, my folders are like this thick of public testimony.
Yeah.
And there are all kinds of narratives out there and 1,000 different voices saying, look, you got to do this, you can't do this, or if you do this, and it really confuses everything. And so you have to get really deep into the weeds before you start getting an understanding.
That's a defense too.
Pardon?
I said that's a defense too. Too much information, you can't make it up their mind which way to go.
It's so complicated, and yet at the same, and there are a lot of special interests that have their hands, and you want to make sure that it overall takes helps the customers or maybe my constituents. I want to make sure that their energy prices are lower and that they have a full understanding. So we're doing like a series on my TV shows, which is, you ought to watch it. It's really good.
Okay.
Here's the plug.
But, well, we have everybody from the PUC and Eversource to the RPS people coming on to talk, just so that people can get an understanding what all the information that comes before us, and we got to kind of sift through that.
Yeah.
It's almost like an audit, but then we have to come up with legislation to say, hey, look, well, we got to do this, we got to do this and this, and there's always going to be somebody that's going to be upset.
Oh, definitely.
And so this whole process is I don't know. You've got more of a responsibility. You hear this. You hear everything.
Well, but you're right on it. Look, change can come. It can be a leadership change that's needed. It could be financial. It could be structural. It could be cultural. Right? Financial change can come almost instantaneously. This wasn't funded. We need to fund it. Or this is funded and we don't need that program. Let's pull it back. Leadership change can come pretty darn quickly. Let's do an assessment on who's there. We need someone with a different perspective. Cultural change is one of the most important ones, and that takes time. And that's it. And part of the cultural changes, we got to understand the details. You can't just look at everything at 30,000 feet, and because you know what happens? Just what you said. People end up not making a decision. My father gave me one piece of advice, and most folks know my dad, but he gave me one piece of advice. He said, make a decision. Right? Indecision is the worst thing you can do as a manager. And I think, frankly, we've had governors and some leadership in the past few years where indecision was the norm. Right? I'll defer. I'll let them do it. No, you got to get involved. You got to manage. And it's hard. It takes a lot of time. Takes a lot of work. But that's what we were elected to do. And I tell everyone, and I think Senator Avard shares, our job is to do our job. Right? We can't be like Washington. Right? What happens in Congress in Washington, whether you're talking about the House or the Senate, is appalling to me because they are not doing their job on any level.
Right.
And no one can claim any sort of victory in the federal Congress right now. So none of them are doing their job. So that's how we kind of separate ourselves from New Hampshire. We're moving the ball forward. We're making decisions and we're being clear and transparent about it. We're throwing politics aside, as much as we can. It always gets in the way, but you got to be able to deal with it as much as you can and making the best decisions for the people and then being able to go out and explain it. Explain to us, Senator Avard, why you do this. Explain to us, Governor, why you might go down this path. And when you get into the details, we can explain it clearly, concisely, and I think that's why we're having so much success in the state.
I couldn't have asked for a better ending to this interview. That was perfect. I'd like to invite you back again in a couple of months, and we could talk about some other area that we didn't get to this time.
Well, there's lots to talk about. There's always lots to talk about.
That's right. So thank you very much for being on.
Carl, thanks for having us on.
Thank you, and thank the audience for listening in. And don't forget, if you have any comments or you want to get involved with some of the politics here in Nashua, call me at 598-2795. And we'll sign you up. Thank you for listening.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.